Hi, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to another day in the Systems Lab for the last of our free trainings this June. Coming up today, we have the process Distillery. How are we going to be crafting sales conversations that are really focused on value? And then how does having a distilled process really aid in our creation of scalable systems? So that's what I have for you today. Excuse me. The pollen count and the wildfire smoke today is a little rough, so I apologize in advance for this beautiful vocal fry that I have happening today. Okie dokie, let's get right into it. So if you haven't met me before, hi, I'm Nikki. My pronouns are she, her, and I work as an entrepreneurial operations ninja, the right hand behind the curtain to helping entrepreneurs work with and create operational and systems ecosystems that really help them drive business growth and scalability in whatever way that means to them. So as service providers, we are often asking ourselves things like, how do I get clients? How do I stand out? How do I package my time and expertise? And then on the other end, your ideal clients are asking things like, how do I find the right person? How do I know what I need? What would this person do for me? And how will I know if they are the right person? So the idea here and kind of the underlying theme of this is, how can we create a sense of safety? This person seems like they'd be safe to say yes to. And, oh, this person gets it. They get me. I get them. So what does that look like? So, excuse me, you may have seen me share the trust funnel model before. This is how I think about my sales and marketing. And ultimately what it's about is it's about taking someone from going, who, to, yes, please, I would like to work with you. Here's my money. And to do that, there needs to be kind of like two boundaries or two guardrails on there. And that is the I get it and the I matter section. So I get it, meaning me as a potential buyer, I get what you do. Me as a service provider that is having the sales conversation, I get what you, my potential client, are putting down. And then there's a sense of like, each side gets that they matter. Like, you're going to make a good choice by hiring me to do your operations. And I feel like you're going to, be the right person for me to work with on this. Like, we're going to have a good relationship. So to make the journey, we need to have those two pieces. But we also need to kind of understand a couple of different things. So generating curiosity is like, oh, I'm interested. What is this about? Establishing trust and authority is really about, okay, cool. Like, what about you makes you the right person? And the whole idea of welcoming invitations is essentially saying, here's what it is like if you were to say yes to working with, like, let's say me. So they need to understand your process. What happens if they say yes, how they know it will work, and what is expected of them. And what can they expect of us? Because honestly, so many people look for support in their businesses because they're stressed. So how can we kind of like help them regulate and settle, like, and know, what do you need from me so that I can show up and be the first person? So today, what we're going to do within the process Distillery is really focus in on that third step. So when most service providers think about how they are going to package their offer or the types of things they're going to do, they think in terms of tasks they can accomplish. I can write copy and create graphics in Canva. I manage schedules and inboxing. I organize files. And I can upload call replays into your Facebook group. And when we put all that together into a package or a value stack, for example, they might at a very basic level say, I charge $20 an hour and I will manage your inbox, calendar, organize your files, create graphics in Canva, and post on Facebook. So it's like Lego when you're putting together like offers and packages. You're putting pieces together to build a thing and then you sell that thing. The problem with approaching it as the pieces you're putting together as a list of tasks is it creates one of two problems. One, the story around it is too small, so the value isn't apparent. I could say, hi, I charge $250 an hour. Okay, well, great. I could go find someone that does it for $20 an hour because I haven't presented it in such a way that the value is apparent. So that's one way it could show up. But on the other side, my kind of value stack or my package can be way too big with a long list of items that there's no real connection to. I see this a lot in coaching circles or people who do like online courses. They'll say things like, I provide community, I provide introductions, I provide networking. There's 3 calls a week and 1 private call and all these things. And those things don't feel like they're there to solve my problem. And they don't feel like a relief, honestly, in many ways. Those feel like a lot of work to me. And I don't necessarily want that amount of work. I have a problem. I just want you to solve it for me. So a value stack can become really ineffective when it's about you, your ego, and what you think the client wants to see instead of what they need to see. So instead, we can use a signature process that really talks about the outcomes that we provide, or that will come out of the work and collaborative work that we do together, and we'll give it insight into what I do, what they need to do. Like, how do we expect people? Because that's where safety really comes into this. If I know what you expect from me, I can start working on how I can deliver that. If I constantly feel like, I don't know what needs to happen behind the scenes to get these tasks done, and you surprise me with them, that is very, very jarring. So the idea really behind the process Distillery is that context creates clarity. Most clients don't need a ton of options, nor do they really need to get like too specific into an hourly rate, because they can get overwhelmed with choice or uninspired by just plain numbers. What they need instead is a small, curated journey that satisfies like the exact craving that they're having and will provide some relief. All this to say, we need to understand their language that they use and then translate it accordingly. So this is where we kind of put all of these things together and put them through the distilling process and say, what is going to come out of this? So I'm going to put in things like my skill set, my experience, the strategies I have, the tactics I use, the different ways that I work, those milestones, those goals. I just realized that last one is double. I don't remember what was supposed to be there. So let's just say it's 3. And really in that bottle have something special. It's like when, one of my jobs that I got for the summer is I work at a winery, and it's so much fun. And last night we had a wine training session where the winemaker really told us a lot about the history of the property and why our winemaking process is very unique. So she was talking about things like, here's how the soil interacts with the wind, interacts with our barrels, interacts with this fermentation process, and all of the levers she manipulates to create what is in the bottle. So this process helps what could be normal and average become really special. I feel like I skipped a page. No, all right, I did. Because here's the thing, I turned to a lot of my clients and asked them, for an example, what do you look for when you are looking to work with someone? Let's just use an operations person like me. What are you looking for? Here's what some of them said. They want to know that I understand systems and strategy and team management, and that I really know my shit. They want to see that I am a leader in my own way, and I can just come into a business and take over. They want to see my human side. They want to know how I interact with things. They're really seeking people who are proactive and demanding excellence, being one step ahead of them. And one of the more resounding ones I heard is someone who can think before I do and have a really degree of pride in the work. So that's the language that they're using and what they're seeking. And we are leading with, hi, I'm $20 an hour and I will manage X, Y, and Z. There's this massive disconnect. So it's at this point in the relationship, we really do need to get clear and distill down what we do. So frameworks are a great way to do this, fuller, bigger frameworks. I am a student of Simon Bowen. I love his work, his genius model. So that's definitely out there, but I want to simplify it a little bit further just for today and keep it into creating a signature process that is 3 to 5 steps to it max. So how do we do this? Well, there's a couple things you need to understand. One, you need to think about the flow of your work. Think about how you work with every client or your average client. What happens first? What questions often come up? How quickly do you get started? Is there a long ramp up period? Are there a lot of breaks in between? So think about the overall flow. What would make someone super pumped to have happened in the first day or weeks? What's a quick win you can offer people? What are some of the milestones that happen throughout the engagement? What exists? How will people know that things are going well? How will people know if things are being successful? Mental shifts is a big one. So what things might come up that would make me feel uncomfortable? What could happen that we would have to delay or change something? What would make me feel awesome? Like, what are some of the psychological changes that people might have to manage? And lastly, this idea of like, you can trust me too. If you work with me, then you can trust me to show up X, Y, and Z. And here's what I want to be able to trust in you. So these are some of the questions to start thinking about. And then we start to put them together. We're starting to distill them down. We're looking for themes. We're looking for some things that are always true, no matter the engagement. Because again, a lot of the things I hear is, well, it's custom for every single client. Well, that could be true, but I bet you that you are not reinventing the wheel every single time so that, you're not similar in some way. So here's the example number one I want to give you. So on a project I did a few years ago, I was working with a client on their client onboarding process. It included things like welcome emails, automations, gifts, pre-coaching them through any challenges, and really just working on getting them to, reinforcing their buying decision and getting them into the community and keep them accountable to the choice they've just made. So my process was described as clarify, create, coach. And depending on the level of trust that this potential client has with me, I could explain this a few different ways, but ultimately I would say, okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing that information with me. Here's how I typically work. The first stage is always to clarify. We need to clarify what you need, what's really important to you, and where you want to go. So what is the fact-based current state with the desired outcome? To do that, there's going to be a couple intake forms. We're going to go through a kickoff call. I'm going to gather as much data as possible within the first 24 hours of us working together. And at the end of that initial period, I'm going to have everything I need to move into the next stage. Stage 2 is create. Now that I know what we want, what's missing, what's going well, what's currently very frustrating, I am going to create a plan that will move us forward. And this plan will have clear deliverables, milestones, and very specific ways in which the both of us need to show up and how we need to prepare to work with each other. Once we come to agreement on that plan that we have co-created, the third stage is coach. Our number one focus becomes, how do we implement that plan, ensure that we stay accountable to it and to each other, and how can I support you and the team and the key stakeholders around you to execute and implement this plan, but also knowing that we're going to optimize as we go. Don't feel like you get locked into something, we're never going to look at it again. If we start running this plan and 2 weeks into things, we realize, this thing is really not for me, we will fix it. Those are the 3 stages to working with me: clarify, create, and coach. Because if I can describe it that way, you can kind of see how the conversation changes, so that when I do say, and here's the financial investment to work with me, it has a different lens on it. Here's another example. So this was for a client of mine that was a social media manager, and we created assess, success, and execute. So when she would first started working with people, the very first thing they would go, the first stage was all about assessing. We want to audit your current audience. We want to see what social media platforms you're currently on. We want to see how your engagement is. If you've run ads, what were the results of those ads? How cohesive is everything? So essentially, we want to assess all of the moving parts so we have a really great, strong structural foundation. Then we're going to go into success. I want to get really clear on what success means to you. What are we striving for? Why do we have social media? What do you expect it to do? Where are people going? What are the success outcomes we are seeking? And then the third stage is execute. Now that we have assessed everything, made a list of what's going well and what's not, we understand what success means to you and what would make you really happy with our work. We're just going to go execute through that plan, and we are going to touch base with you in these ways on these timelines. It's very clear on what's going to happen. And the third example I want to share is one that I created with a client of mine when I was training virtual assistants. And this particular virtual assistant business owner focused on administrative type support. So the signature process she would share with clients is download, offload, report. When they would first start working together, the very first thing she would do is download. I want to dive into emails, calendars, your Slack, your various platforms, to determine what's going on and what's really annoying you. When I move into offload mode, I'm going to take over everything that you don't want to do anymore, or that you only want to be consulted on, so that you immediately get time freed up. And lastly, report. I understand that you struggled with virtual assistants in the past and you felt like you didn't have a handle on what was going on. So we are going to develop a reporting and communication cadence and process so that you can feel really good about the work I'm doing and trust that nothing is falling through the cracks. That's a pretty powerful thing to be able to say to someone. So by sharing a process with a prospective client, you're essentially sharing with them, like, let me just let a past client of mine tell you what I mean. When someone understands your process, then essentially you're showing this prospective client that I'm in the driver's seat. And here are my own internal processes so that you can respect a system I've established within my own business. I know what I'm doing. And because I'm so good at doing that in my own business, I can translate that over into yours. Because now, again, it's not necessarily about price because you're not comparing you and another business owner in the same way. I'm not saying, there will be 7 calls and a Facebook group and it's $1,500 a month. Because then they could look at that and go, okay, well, what is another service provider that has maybe more calls or fewer calls or does different types of tasks for me? I'm just going to look at the price tag back and forth. We haven't even talked about that because the tactics don't necessarily matter at this stage. I'm just trying to paint a picture of what it looks like to move things forward. And when we do that, this is where the fun part comes in, because the last part of this presentation is about how do we use this to create scalable systems. Going back to the initial example, if my service to you includes an X number of hours, I'm $20 an hour, I do inbox, calendar, organize your files. I've hit a roof in terms of how I could serve you, because once I have, if you're on a $20 hour a month retainer and I get like 6 clients of all of that amount, I'm immediately capped out. But because I've led with tasks, I either have to hire people beneath me or just stop growing. If you're, for example, let's say a coach and you say, hey, if you enroll in my coaching program, you get X number of one-on-one calls, X number of group calls. When those things start getting too big with the group calls, well, then you have to add more group calls so that more people have time, or you hire co-coaches or assistant coaches, or you have to get completely out of one-on-one work because now there's no room in your schedule and it does not scale. But if I can lead with things like clarify, create, and coach, that as a process is more infinitely scalable because I haven't committed to specific actions. I'm committed to the outcome of those actions. So it just works much easier. It doesn't lock me into, we will do 7 calls a week and you get a Facebook group and you get a network, because there may come a time when those things don't provide the results I want. So I don't offer them anymore. And now the value or perceived value of what I do has gone down. So if we think in terms of themes or buckets, that is where scaling offers and processes actually comes into place, because it's not about how I did it. It's the journey we took to get there. So it's a little bit of a different how, or rather I should say, it's how we do it, not what we do. Maybe that's slightly more accurate. So some things to think about for you is go through your offers, go back to that initial question of, what happens first? What do people need to know? What are some of the outcomes they can expect? What is the vibe of working with me? What should they be able to trust in me to do? Try to condense that into 3 to 5 words. Why 3? It comes from television and movies and like writing, the rule of 3. Things within groups of 3s are very, very powerful. Fewer than that, the impact isn't as visible because we've only seen it once or twice and we forget about it. More than that, it kind of starts to feel like rote and it loses its impact, just like a joke. And once you tell it 10 times, it's no longer funny. 3 is kind of the sweet spot psychologically for that. So 3 to 5 words to describe your process. And again, focus on what the theme or the bigger picture is, not on, well, we meet twice a week. Because I don't care how we meet. I want the outcome of what we do. And that's where the scalability comes into it. Fantastic. All right. Just under 20 minutes for this last one. So as always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, want to share an example, or just want to chat, you can reach out to me on Instagram at I am Nikki Mick, IAMNIKKIMCK. And if you have an operations project or a little bugaboo in your business that's been bugging you that you'd like to see get cleaned up, highly encourage you to check out the opsshop.biz/pitch, where you can pitch me your project. You tell me the project, you tell me the scope, you tell me your budget, and we'll create some operational magic. So thank you so much again for joining me this week at the Systems Lab, getting caught up on all those replays, and they will be posted and shared soon. May your processes be nimble and lovely and great, and have a happy long weekend. We'll talk to y'all soon.